be live in 3, 2, 1. I'm on the Going Live channel. I'm not even displaying the correct thing. Here we are. We're here.
Heyo.
It's episode 134.
We're exactly 7 minutes after 2 o'clock. Pew pew pew.
Pew pew pew. It's okay. We had the whole daylight change thing, so we're allowed to be a couple minutes late, right?
We're 53 minutes.
I mean, consistently, when have we ever started an episode at 2 o'clock? It's always like 2:05 to 2:10, and everybody tuning in knows that.
We all run on standard pagan time. That's what we always call it in the witch circles.
Or standard queer time, or
exactly.
it gets called native time in native
standard
communities.
Witch time.
Or my mom's family called it. I'm not going to give away my mom's family's name, but they call it their family name time. So let's say they're the Smiths, because the Smith is the most plain name in existence. They'd say we're on Smith time. You know.
Honestly, time is a construct.
Sorry if you're a Smith.
Time is a construct. It's not real. It's just kind of a guideline of when you're supposed to be at places and do things.
Did you just say like gender?
Yes. I hope that made it in.
It did. Time is a construct.
Excellent.
Like gender.
That was such a non-binary thing that I often say to myself constantly.
We were talking about divination because last night I threw some cards from the Wild Unknown archetype deck. If anybody doesn't know what it is, as soon as I pass the mic over to somebody else, I'll bring up a link in the chat for y'all. But essentially, it's an archetype deck, and I really like it because it cuts you to the fucking bone in every way that it can, and I really dig it for that, you know?
So it's like an oracle
basically,
deck?
long story. No, it's an archetype deck, right? I know that you're using the term oracle deck, but I really have a bit of a hair up my ass about oracle decks because I've found a lot of them to be extremely unreliable with divinatory aspects, you know? And like a lot of oracle decks I've found have a flavor where they always want to spin things in a positive new age way where like everything's a good sign, you're always moving in the right way. Like
usually for me, I'll delineate, like I'll use like tarot deck means like Rider-Waite Smith, and then like oracle deck for me just means anything that's not Rider-Waite Smith.
And I get that, yeah. And under that umbrella, you could consider it an oracle deck. I just don't like using that terminology because in my experience, a lot of the new age dribble oracle decks are
they're
chaff.
Yeah.
And they're absolutely fucking irrelevant to any type of divinatory system, and they're often very culturally appropriative. But the wild archetypes, the Wild Unknown archetypes deck fucking slaps because it's like base human archetypes that are already natural in our experience. So it's like the forest, the stone, the womb, the father, the mother, the orphan, the destroyer, you know, the sustainer, apocalypsis, when like your life is falling apart and truth is being revealed and any like things that you've hidden are coming up, or like the vessel or the river. Like they're always something that can relate to the overall human experience because it's not derived from a single culture. It's derived from the human experience, right? So you'll find things more like the judge, the seed, the crone, the king, rather than like the high priestess. You're not going to find something like that, right? So I like the deck because it speaks in these really large, broad terms. And the Jungian archetypes kind of got some weight to them. You know what I mean? Like when they show up and swing, they're already established archetypes to begin with. It's not like any of us invents the archetype of the mountain, right? Like that's a thing that predates all of human experience is the mountain, the sky, the river, right? So it's very intrinsic and elementally connected stuff. Whereas other decks sometimes try to like create a point of reference with like, let's say, 3 of Cups or 2 of Cups. I think 2 of Cups is a good card, right? And a lot of people draw the significance of it being good off of the imagery on it, right? So you kind of craft a card archetype to represent that specific type of a reading, right? Whereas with the archetypes, they just are what they are, right?
Yeah.
If you pull the shapeshifter has something to speak to you as a latent archetype in your deck. And there's like several ways you can do it. You can like draw cards for divinatory readings, which I do like to do. But the creator also recommends like pulling a card out of the deck occasionally and setting it aside on your altar to work with the archetype. I did that last night. The card I got is the Forest, right? A good quote from the Forest card is, if you ever spent a night in the forest and you weren't at least afraid for your life, you were in a tiny glade or a grove. The true forest requires that we at least fear for our lives one night that we spend in it. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've definitely spoken on that before, Sophia, like when you talked about like, you growing up like with having access to literally the woods, not just like a park, but like the woods.
My first time of getting lost in the woods, I was like 5 years old and we almost fell off. We almost died. Like one of the kids we were with fell off a cliff and broke her arm. Like I haven't told y'all that story, but yeah, we got lost in the woods on a boat access only area. When my parents were camping there and the older kids of the family we were camping with took us up into the mountains. But my dad's a firefighter, search and rescue, badass kind of guy. And after Chantel fell down the cliff and broke her arm, the tree broke her fall. She didn't get much more than a broken arm.
That's good.
They found us. I don't remember getting down off the cliff. I just remember being up top screaming for help and being lost and then being down by a creek with my parents later. Like, it's a really traumatic memory.
Oh, yeah, like your brain is going to block out a huge chunk of what happened for sure. Yeah. That's
I remember
wild,
Chantel falling off the cliff. I remember so much of it. And then just we're back at camp. Fuck, for all I know, that it was the Fae that came and found us. And
it could have been.
But yeah, we were talking about the Wild Archetypes deck, and Scott, you were going to dive into something about it because we were talking about how we like it as a divinatory practice.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like wasn't it recently we were discussing about reading for yourself? Didn't we recently discuss that on here?
Probably, but my brain is dumb today.
It's funny because I almost feel like the Archetypes deck is almost designed for someone to like read for themselves. I mean, sure, you can use it to read for others, of course, but by design, it feels like it's something that you can actually sit with and reflect upon, and just in the way that it's, because I sometimes feel like even with the tarot, it can be a little loose-ended, and it's funny because as broad as the Archetypes like deck is, there is something about it that makes it that lends itself to actual reflection, to meditation, to sitting with your reading and actually falling into that space inside yourself where you're like, wow, I can actually pinpoint particular moments. It allows you to sort of engage yourself that a lot of the other divinatory systems, and then of course it's just personal experience, right? I'm not saying that tarot sucks, I'm not saying that, but
you'd never catch any of us saying that.
Coming from the person who has a chest full of decks, no, I don't think anyone would suspect.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Haven't you outgrown the trunk at this point?
Pretty much now, yeah. My divination trunk
was like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Good God.
I kind of, the worst part is like, I know I swore that I never wanted another deck ever again, but of course, literally
like, I have everything.
Like, of course, on my wish list is like tons of decks that I want. I'm like, God damn it.
People make good new decks, right? Like the Wild Unknown Archetypes is only made in 2018.
Seems forever ago.
People have really, like, I feel like people have really upped their game on I guess what we're calling, like Oracle decks, which is what I call them too. I have the same definition as Jay, just to clarify. But I do agree with Sophia that, and I've talked to Jay about this, I do agree, Sophia, that a lot of Oracle decks of the past were very much like airy-fairy, very spiritual bypass, right?
Especially like Angel, Oracle, and like
the big offender for me is the spirit animal decks, right? Made by fucking white women and like people who have nothing to do with those cultures coming around talking about a bunch of shit that has nothing to do with them.
Yeah, I know there's like that standard it's that Ted Andrews person. I don't know if they are they're a common name that I see because they have like the Animal Speak, I think is what it's called, the Animal Speak Oracle deck. I think Ted Andrews is a good one. I don't know. All I know is that I see the name like in terms of like popular, but like I don't really know much about them.
People have
he's
very popular, but people have different feelings about him. But he's been around in the community, and in all fairness, there's some of his meditations that are actually really good. He has this really excellent meditation. I forget, it's one of the books I have upstairs, and it helps you to sort of like bust out all like the negative miasma and stuff. And it's just like this energetic work meditation. And
that was the Vortex, right?
Huh?
Isn't that also
you remember it?
Yeah, because Ted Andrews has also that psychic protection. Is that what it is? I think that's
he does.
The book
there's a lot.
Yeah.
He does have the psychic protection, and I guess when it comes to that, I take the opinion of Thorn Mooney,
I like her
and that is like read everything, even the stuff that you think is crap, because one, it teaches you how to discern what isn't crap, and two, even crappy things could have shells, like little shards of truth, and you can maybe take something from the crap and find something useful in it, right?
And in the age of the internet, so like suppose someone suppose you want to read some Z Budapest, right? Like she's known for being a TERF, right? So suppose you're like, you know what, I want to read her shit though, see what she's all about. In the glorious age of the internet, you can do that for free. So you don't actually ever have to like financially support someone's bullshit either. Just saying.
Also, can I just have
I was just going to say libraries have work too. Please go ahead.
Also libraries, yes.
I just wanted to make a PSA just to talk to all of our family that are in Dianic Wicca. Speaking of, y'all need to get it together just a little bit. I had an argument with a Dianic Wiccan on the internet talking about, I think I mentioned this about physical sex on Tumblr. Yeah.
I think I remember you mentioning it last week, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to, like, I know it's not all of you, because I know many Dianic Wiccans who are very inclusive and really cool, but like, call your people in just a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's time, just to have a heart-to-heart, maybe just a little. Yeah,
a little self-reflection.
Yeah. But
we were talking about the archetypes. Yeah, the archetypes deck.
To get back to the archetypes deck, but it really is, like I said, just to reiterate, it really is designed to allow for a deep reflection, a real reflection, not one where you're spiritual bypassing or where you're lying to yourself. I don't really even know exactly if I can actually tell you how it's designed specifically to do any of this, but it seems to be how it works for me. Any attempt to try to steer it in a direction, it just seems to fail for whatever reason. The way it's written, the way it's interpreted, it just seems to like, nope. Like
I have a thought on that. I think that the way that it's written makes a big difference, right? Because it's not trying to prescribe or define, it's trying to feed you food for thought, right?
Yeah.
Very often, a lot of decks do this thing where they state things like their objective truths. Don't get me wrong, the archetype does that a little bit. Like on the prayer card, last line is, you need to return to your prayer. There's no other option, right? That is a little bit deterministic, right? But I think that where this deck hits home is it's not trying to be like, you're good, you're great, things are coming your way, blow smoke up your ass, make you happy. It's trying to give you some real meat or gravel that you can reckon with, right? Because it knows that people don't really come to divination to get a everything's going to be all right answer. Nobody really wants that, right? Especially if it feels like it's a rigged answer because all the cards in the deck trend positive.
Yeah.
That's something I actually really value about the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck, right? When I talked to ladies back in like the New Age shops, way back when I was like 21 years old, they would all say, "Oh, it's a dark deck. It's got bad vibes behind it." I fucking love it because it's willing to say, "You suck, you're stupid, stop fucking up." Right? That was the first tarot deck that actually grabbed me by the squeaky bits and said, "Pick your shit up," you know?
And it's true.
I value that in a divination system. I don't come to divination to be told that everything's okay. If everything's okay, I wouldn't be fucking divining about it, right? I don't need reassurance. I need food for thought, and the archetypes give me that.
Yeah. I 100% totally agree. I really do. It's funny. I don't know why what you were saying reminded me. I was just watching this outstanding short film from Ireland, and it was interesting because the whole film is based off of this very old divinatory practice from the old bards, and it's imbus something. Anyway,
wait, this is a documentary you were watching?
No, it's a film.
Oh, it's a film.
And it's kind of spoken word poetry and a film at the same time.
I love me a good art film.
I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah.
But there's this ritual that they did, and we have imbus starts with an F. Imbus something. I'll send the name. But it's funny because in this ritual they had to in the original text where we get this ritual from that remains from ancient Ireland, it says that the bard must eat of the red flesh. Now, some people there's interpretations that suggest that it's talking about either eating the raw flesh of a pig, a dog, or another
I think
farm
it means
animal.
an apple.
But other people, there are scholars who also think it's from the fly agaric, the toadstool. Due to its psychoactive properties. And what they had to do was they had to blindfold themselves and they had to eat of the red flesh. And the way the show presents it is as if they're suggesting that they have to fast prior and bathe in stream water, and then they go to this ritual, eat of the red flesh, blindfold themselves, and then they had to lay down on their side with their hands cupping their face on either side, and they had two attendants that would watch them as they fell asleep because they couldn't be rolled over or moved. And during this ritual, they would receive inspiration, as it was called, to the druids, to the bards, right? Which was just another word for meaning divination or oracular visions, right? And it's funny, we talk about in this, I think if I'm interpreting the poem correctly, it was about the human condition. It was about how very immature we are for people who see ourselves as above the food chain, right? We think that we're above the lion, and it kind of talked about how like we're so arrogant as a species, and we are. And that was the poetry, the spoken word part of it was about, I believe. But what I was specifically looking at was this sort of these divination systems of the ancient past that sort of really stripped you bare, because during a lot of the ritual, at least in the movie, the gentleman was naked with incantations written on his body, and it was you were forced to feel some kind of fear, very much like being in the forest, the real woods, you have to feel fear. So it's interesting that even to this day, we're looking for divination that, don't get me wrong, like I don't want a divination that skews the other way either, right? Like I don't want a divination that's all doom and gloom, but
right, like
I definitely want one. I definitely want one that's going to be real, that's going to give it to me straight and let me figure out a way to maybe make it better, or to whatever it may be. If it's something that I'm doing, like if the cards are like, you're being an asshole and you shouldn't do this thing, and it's like, oh shit, okay, so I definitely got to change, you know what I mean? Like how do I go about that? And those are the kind of things that need to be done. You have to, divination is supposed to make you do the real work, right? Which is that changing yourself, right? So yeah.
It's a little bit of a synchronicity on my end that we're talking about like archetypes, right? Because I recently finished this book called Songs of the Meta Mythos. Shit, last name's Cooper. Shit, hold on, I have a picture of the book. 1 second. C.F. Cooper, I think.
Unfortunately, everyone knows him because he was a victim of a Karen.
Yes, but he's the guy with his with the bird show on National Geographic.
Yeah.
Christian Cooper is his name. I can't find my photo app, even though it is right in front of my face. There it is. Yes. Yeah, I love it. Man blindness is a real thing. I'm gonna write a dissertation on it. Anyway, I feel like the more
blindness?
Man blindness, as I call it. I swear, the more testosterone.
The inability to see things.
The inability to see what's right in front of my fucking face. I'm like, where's this thing? Where is it? It's right here. Yeah, so it's called Songs of the Meta Mythos, and it's by Christian Cooper, but he writes it under a C.F. Cooper. But the book is literally, it's like a meta myth. It kind of, you can tell he's taken inspiration from, just myths that have spanned across humanity, and he's kind of like constructed these basic archetypes, and it goes from creation to kind of like what kind of reads as like a Ragnarok kind of thing at the end of the book. He writes this as a piece of like mythic fiction kind of thing. He's like, I wrote this book, you decide how much of it is true. Knowing that he is pagan, he is some kind of magical practitioner. He has like an article that he wrote for the Wild Hunt. Knowing that about him, I really feel like this is a combination of like, just like a work of fiction and like a story that he wanted to tell, but also like there's a lot of like, I feel like these are entities that he might have interacted with, in his own meditations, in his own practice, and he just wanted to share their stories, is the kind of the feel that I get. How he puts it in the book is like, this is just a story, you decide how much of it is true. So I kind of like that. It's not like he's trying to be like, this is my cult and my religion, and you should all follow it, right? It's not like that. It's just a story of myths. But what's really cool is like at least the creation myth part of it. It starts off with, basically there is, the void, right? Space. And there is this cosmic dragon that exists in whatever the voids of space. And basically that whole dragon thing is to devour. It just wants to devour and consume so that there is nothing. But there is this great goddess, Unu, as is the name that he gives the great goddess in this book. And she sings the Song of Diversity. And so from her singing, it just reverberates. Oh God, I hit my mic. It reverberates out into, the void, and then we get stars and the universe essentially. And then this goddess Unu, she morphs into three, so she becomes the three who are one, and she's night, and she's cosmos, and she's Kronos, and it's just a very queer, like, human archetype. And it's cool because he doesn't describe race. Everything is very queer and like gender fluid. So like, and even like the humans that are mentioned in like the stories, the humans that are interacting with these celestials, like they're not, it's no region, there's no time that's referenced. Like it's very much like a very blanket human archetype story. And I'm not saying like it's my new religion, but it's definitely my new religion. I just I really I kind of want to start to work with these archetypes after reading this book because they feel very accessible and very real. So like you have Unu, the great goddess, Cosmos, Lord of the Stars, Maya, who is Earth. She is a goddess who transforms her body into the planet known as Earth. Then you have Luna, which is the moon, Terra, which is the Palace of 1,000 Wonders. It's this sort of like place that is mystical on Earth, but it's not on Earth. It's sort of like that in between kind of place. And Sol, the sun, is the luminous eye of Cosmos. It is actually one of Cosmos's eyes that he put there to watch over Maya, which was his favorite of his children. And this is all explained in the stories. It's really cool how he weaves it all together. Then you have Kronos, Father Time, Doom, which is the god of fate, and Kronos' son. And then you have the 3 horses of Kronos: Antis the Pale, Clarion the Swift, Destix the Untamed. And there's really cool stories about how those horses interact. And then you have like the Nocturne. So he categorizes it into like 3 different things. So like the first batch was the Celestials, you have the Temporals, and then the Nocturnals. So you have Logos, which is night, and then you have Fatale, which is night's daughter, goddess of death, and you have Serene, goddess of sleep. And Doom actually ends up being married to both Fatale and Serene, which I find kind of interesting. And they all reside within Umbra, like the Palace of Night. So it was very like space, cosmos, very general human archetypes, and I loved every minute of it because while like connecting with like my Celtic ancestry, right? Like working with Cernunnos or like those deities, it's nice in a way. It feels familiar in a way, but it also still feels foreign because I'm so far removed from it. This just feels really like fresh, but also familiar. So I highly recommend the book for anyone who wants to check it out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I remember reading about him and reading his article on the Wild Hunt. I remember I was very like surprised to see. I was like, "Oh hey,
honestly,
your family."
Yeah, I think I don't know. Maybe I'll reach out at some point and see if
I could rewatch his whole show. He did a whole episode on, well, not a whole episode, but he did a segment on red-winged blackbirds. Like I was just sitting there, like,
oh, I love those birds.
Oh,
they're so cool.
In the swamp that I grew up next to, there's a fuck ton of red-winged blackbirds, and there's a couple of sounds that always remind me of home: meadowlarks, red-winged blackbirds, and the chorus of frogs at night on a swamp. If you know what I'm talking about, there is no fucking better lullaby for people like us who grew up near swamps than to hear the chorus of crickets and frogs in a swamp at night. Fucking peace right there.
Yes. Chris was asking. Oh, hi, Chris. You are in the chat. Hello, welcome. Chris says, food for thought. Divination is refreshing, and the whole point, deeper meaning of divination. Yeah, divination is refreshing and it can also be. It's like with anything. It's like you don't want to like have too much of a good thing, right? So like, be careful not to divine too much because you could just divine yourself out of existence.
Yeah.
Like life can lose all meaning if you divine too deeply.
If I may, there's a theory that runs with certain magicians that I kind of fuck with a little bit, and it's that divination doesn't always do this, but it can change outcomes, especially if like a causal pathway or outcome wasn't solidified. Somebody divining about it can then set a course of actions that causes that thing to happen, right? I remember reading a book on tarot when I was much younger, and I don't even know if I agree with this, but the opening line that really stuck in my head was, tarot doesn't tell you what's going to happen, it causes the reading to come true. And I'm like, I don't know about that, but I was talking to like somebody last night and she had like a very similar opinion. So like a lot of people don't even like let divination be done for them. And I know if other people ask me, hey, can I do you a reading? My answer is always no. Unless it's like a magician I trust intimately, I don't want anybody putting their energy or insights into my circumstances that I'm already planning on trying to steer as I am, right? So I tend to reserve divination for when I really fucking need it. I don't do readings for other people unless I'm requested to, and I don't even advertise my services, and I don't even charge. But when I do readings, they hit hard, and I think it's because I don't really waste the readings. You know what I mean? Like last night I did one because like I've been in one of the deepest depressions I've been in for a long time, for like the past month and a half, right? Like I'm literally in the fucking underworld right now, just like the first card that I got in my reading. And that's the point where I went and did a reading, when I felt fucking hopeless and I was looking for answers, right? Great time to do it, right? But like, let's say it's like after school on a Wednesday and you want to do a reading about your friend to see if they have a crush on you. Probably not the best use of a divination, right? At least in my opinion.
Yeah, and it all depends on the context of like how old are you, and you know what I mean, like so if you're 17, and I really hope that your biggest concern is if they like you or not, you know what I mean. I genuinely
I think most
hope
17-year-olds right now are worried about the collapse of the world that they're going to inherit, and the climate crisis is probably taking up the majority of their concern right now. Scott, you were gonna say something at the same time as me, and I got my stuff in. What were you gonna say?
It got shuffled off somewhere. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's okay.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing with you just because I felt that so hard. Like, when the dissociation hits, I was on a phone call at work the other day, and I couldn't think of a word for the letter Q. I was trying to like give like military talk over the phone. I'm like, I can't say queer. I couldn't think of the word queen. And I was like, Q for Q?
Q for Q.
Yeah, the
Q as in Q.
Q.
Q is in Qatar.
I swear to God,
the cognitive nonsense with disassociation is frustrating, but also hilarious at times.
At the same time, exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, I think the thing that's on my mind right now is talking to the point about teenagers today and like their concerns about, economy and world collapse and things. And I was just saying to myself, I was like, whether it's a good thing that they're worrying about that or not, I'm not sure,
because like I don't want I was kind of like saying this earlier, like we were talking about like celebrity gossip and stuff like that, and honestly I've also been on like an editing spree, so I kind of don't have a context of like when we've last talked, because I've listened to all of the episodes like just before we recorded. But we were kind of talking about in a previous episode, and I kind of wanted to just reiterate it here, is like I want a world in which celebrity gossip and drama is our biggest fucking problem. You know what I mean? Like, I would love that for us, because like everyone's like, who gives a shit about Taylor Swift? And yeah, okay, great. Like she's popular and everyone's fucking talking about her. And I just wish that we lived in a world where like we didn't have to be like, well, all these wars are happening and all these terrible things are happening in the world. And it's like, yeah, I know. Like I know, but it's just like, I don't know. I want a better world in which our only drama is social drama, not like violence.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that, because this just reminded me, I had like something else that felt very validating about how I feel about like how people are having conversations about getting drafted. They're threatening to, or well, not threatening to, that's a really bad word, but they're
talking about reinstating the draft.
Right, yeah. Thank you. And people are like discussing not going and would rather face jail or whatever. And it's funny because there was this one girl had this kind of funny but very pointed TikTok about like, I don't think anyone should be drafted because I don't think we should be having war. I think war is immature. I think war is archaic, and I was just like, oh my God,
yeah,
you get me. And it, like,
I don't think like we should have it. Honestly, she's right.
you know, and like it frustrates. And don't get me wrong, like I understand that it's here. I'm not like burying my head in the sand, right? I'm just saying that, you know, it just felt good to have other people get where I'm coming from, you know, where it's like, I'm not saying that I, you know, I don't see war, you know, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that why?
Right. Like, can't we all just
really
talk about it?
What is get along?
I mean, no, because the CIA control the fucking world.
What'd you say, Sophia?
I said, no, we can't all get along because the CIA and the US wants to control the fucking world. And it's not just them either, right?
Yeah. What were you saying, Scott?
And that's...
I was saying, like, I don't know if it's possible for us all to get along all the time.
Right.
But the thing is that there are plenty of people I don't get along with, and I don't shoot them. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't install a military base in their country and then use the CIA to control their elections so that they don't have a say in their own fucking military bases in their country. I'm not talking about a tiny little nation you've never heard about. I'm talking about fucking Australia, okay?
Right.
I wasn't prepared for the way you phrased that, Scott. It was just so direct. It felt like I got shot, you know? I was like, oh,
all I want to do, hold on. All I want to do is take my camera here and just squish this around and be like,
oh my god, you're a target from the shooting range.
We don't like guns, but if we have to use them, we will.
I do support guns in the hands of people who wish to use them to protect their families and things and communities. That's fine.
Yep.
But it's just
war is
like
archaic and it's only ever... I'm going to go on a rant. War is archaic and it's only even really used to support the modern military-industrial complex, which props up modern fucking white supremacy and imperialism everywhere, right? Like, we're talking about entrenched networks of power so deep you have a fucking spy network that spans the entire globe that openly admits that they listen to their fucking civilian population talking to their kids on their phone, right? Anybody who's curious about what I'm talking about, go look at the video I just put in the Discord. 4 guys in Australia snuck into Pine Gap, if you know what that is, which is like only one of the most secret military bases on Australia.
And they snuck in?
Responsible.
Shit.
Yeah, they snuck in through the front fucking gate. Yeah, they got caught, but it's a whole thing now, and like they're not sure whether or not they're gonna get in a lot of shit because they like fled from the cops and avoided them. And you should really watch the video because it really blows wide open how fucked the military-industrial complex is. Like, the United States has another secret base in Australia that's so secretive, nobody even knows what the fuck it is. And it's like the largest freestanding structures in Australia. And occasionally, when a passenger plane flies by it, it just goes down and crashes. So the international community decided, yeah, we don't want to know what the Americans are doing there. Let's just reroute the flights around it and let them do whatever they're doing there, right?
Why are we allowed to have that there? Like, why did the Australian government
one group of people allowed to levy so much monopoly of violence against everybody else in the fucking world? And why do we always just, like, walk on eggshells around this, right? We live as modern fucking vassals under a, like, whole fucking neo-feudalist modern structure where the state itself is the lord, and you don't pay it your tax of food from the land. You pay it your subservience through your lifelong dedication to the structures that uphold it, and it gives you a token amount of recourse to, or like money, so that you can live in society, so long as you serve the needs of this institution that continues to gain power, dehumanize everybody, and subject humans to more suffering than has ever existed on our fucking planet. We are living in times with unparalleled evil, and it's always been there. It's just more mask off now because they think, hey, you know, we basically rule the world anyways. Who's gonna fuck with us, you know? And like, that's even part of the video I'm talking about. Like, the CIA agents in there don't even try to hide that they're CIA agents when they're gambling in a casino, and that's how these guys find the fucking information on Pine Gap. You know what I mean? Like
the whole point of being a secret agent is being like, shit's a secret. Like,
no, the whole point of being a secret agent is that you can kill poor people with impunity.
Like, is Archer real life? Like the show Archer? Because he literally walks around, he's like, I'm a fucking secret agent, pounds down a bunch of whiskey and starts shooting people. Like,
basically, it's not called the secret agent. They're just called the CIA operatives, right?
Oh
and like each of them have a different fucking role and terminology and whatever. But like,
yeah,
the shit goes deep, and we're all like living as vassals to a modern empire that is trying to control the totality of human existence until the end of time. That's what they want.
And I have to ask, why though?
Because
why?
It's like,
but why?
Because, okay, I can explain it. They're fucked in the head from the type of games that they've been playing for so long. When you give someone impunity and power on a level that nobody else on the planet can touch, you get this really nasty kind of cancerous thing that grows, right? It exists because it's afraid that something else will come to exist that could rival it, potentially destroy it, and take its throne. It's like kings ruling people, right? The king doesn't understand that his subjects are human beings who just want to live and survive and not have to deal with any of the royal bullshit. The king only sees dissidents, rebels, and plots against him, right? Because those are how he maintains his control, all of those avenues, right? So you start enacting this type of violence on people, it will warp your mind. You will come to see it as just the normal state of things, right? You become entirely desensitized to it, which allows you then to utilize a type of violence against other people that cannot be levied against you unless somebody is willing to degrade themselves to the same level. You know what I mean? And that's how kings and empires rule their subjects, not by understanding them, but by understanding the terms and conditions they set through violence and expecting everybody else to play by the same rules.
So I always say, like, you know, not that, like, if you're in a position of leadership, it's always good to have good advisors around you. You know what I mean? Because, like, as a leader, you're kind of just the face. Like, I don't want to be like, you know, all leaders are pointless, you know, like it's good to have that, like, it's good to have the face, it's good to have the figurehead, you know, someone that the group can rally behind. And I'm talking on a much smaller scale than like a kingdom, you know. But like, that's why, like, I always loved the story of like Merlin and King Arthur, and Merlin being like King Arthur's like advisor. And I know that story is basically fantasy, you know, it's just a story, but I just kind of wish that
is it though?
Yeah, you know, tis a story, but how much of it is true, we don't know. But sort of this idea of, like, you know, the king's advisors. If you are a king, one, you need good advisors, you need good people around you, one, to protect you, right? You know, because you're a figurehead, and, you know, people are gonna try and gun for you, and, you know, take your position of power, sure. But aside from that, like, if you have your advisors that are also in tune with the people that you're governing, or the people that you're leading, or whatever it is that you're like in charge of, it's just good to have good people around you. So I really feel like a leader or a king is like only as good as their advisors, in a way, you know. But I really think of that, like, but now it just seems like, you know, like when the president gets in power, he just stacks the cabinet with, you know, whoever begged him for a job. I don't really know how the president picks their cabinet, you know?
They
like...
staff whoever's going to be loyal to them, because it's all about maintaining power, and it's all the same game, and that's why I call it a game. It's because it's like Risk or Monopoly.
It is a
game. They
game.
don't understand they're with real people doing real things. To them, it's pieces on board and advantage to gain or lose, right?
Yeah.
It's fucking Risk, right?
It's very abstract. They don't realize
that they play fucking dice with entire nations worth of people, you know?
Yeah, especially, like, you know, with all the money and weapons we feed to all these other conflicts, all these wars that happen, you know, we're just trying to capitalize on everyone else's bullshit. Oh, Chris was saying in the chat, the public does not need automatic weapons. We are not actually living in Fortnite. I agree.
I agree with that.
We're not living in Fortnite. We don't need to be Rambo.
No. When I said, people arming themselves, I definitely did not mean that.
Well, I mean, hear me out also, too. Sure, I get the argument that, like, you don't need automatic weapons because, like, let's look at the gun death statistics.
Right.
It's pretty nasty, right? But also, like, everybody knows deep down the reason that was put into the Constitution was so that you could deal with corruption that took away your right to live a fucking free life, right?
Yes.
So, like, why do you have them guns in the first place if corruption gonna happen that hard?
It's just like this country was founded on corruption, like to its deepest core. And I just feel like that was the seed that was planted, and it manifested into this. Honestly, I say the word manifested, it comes back to manifest destiny, that whole thing that went on in America, like the whole damn thing is ours, and we decided it was ours before we even got here and knew what was over here. We came here saying that it was ours. I hate saying we. I just mean we in like a human sense. But it's
in a white sense, what?
See, but that's the thing. I hate like this whole of trying to deconstruct racism and to combat it. You have to deconstruct the concept of what is white, like, because white isn't anything. It's not real. Like, it doesn't mean shit. And yet I still
just like gender and time, race is a construct. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, but it's also still a construct that gets people killed, right?
Right. And so it's like, how do you? I guess that's the question for me. Is like, so we say to white people, listen, we got to deconstruct this idea of whiteness. Whiteness is not a culture. It's not a thing. It's just you being fucking racist. Okay, so you need to stop that, and check in with reality in modern society. Like, are you Scottish? Are you Irish? Are you from are you Polish? Like, where are you from? Where are your people from? I think it's like a twofold problem here in America because a lot of us don't know. I'm sure a lot of us are descended from poor immigrants, I would assume. Not all of us are from rich, kind of families. Probably just descended from poor immigrants that were just trying to, escape a shitty situation over there, so they came over here and, here we are now. It's just like white isn't real, and we have to like hark on that first. So I don't know how you tell a bunch of white people that being white isn't a thing, but then also tell them to reclaim their ancestral, I guess, lineages, right?
I think all of it comes down to nuance, right? Because when you say that white isn't a thing, a lot of people's minds are going to pop because they're going to look at their skin and say, but I'm unmelanated, right? So then what you have to explain is that when you're saying white isn't a thing, you're talking about like the white culture. Class of people that was created in like the Western world as a with hegemonic models that people could appeal to it, right? The thing is, like, even if it's a made up concept like money, what's imperative to understand is it gets people shot on the street who are not white, right? It may be socially created. So is homelessness, and that's killing people every day, right? So I think what's important is to be as accurate as always when talking about this stuff and to not hyperbolize. So, like, I don't think white people feeling bad about being white does anything fucking useful whatsoever because it just makes everybody have to do more labor. But getting them to understand how their whiteness intersects with institutional privilege and how that specifically makes it so that other people who don't have that social construct of whiteness don't have access to those advantages, and sometimes, in fact, very often have to suffer as a consequence, right? So you need to drive home that like white people aren't bad because of the skin color that they were born with. It's that their actions when they support white supremacy because it automatically props them up, if they're unexamined, they will unconsciously support a system that was already built to exclude everybody else because you were raised within that system and set up to not understand it, right? Like, and that's kind of the problem with like activism is nobody really wants white people to feel bad. Nobody even wants that because like, one, that just causes more problems. It causes hurt feelings instead of people actually understanding what needs to be done, which is like radical unity and like de-radicalization. Like, because like, for example, let's say I encounter a white dude who's a racist. If I don't deal with that and like talk to him, becomes somebody else's problem. It might become somebody else's problem that becomes fatal for that person because they don't have the same skin tone as me and can't engage in that conversation with the same level of safeness, right? So I think we should use the term that we did earlier on in the episode when y'all were talking about Dianic Wiccans and say, call people in. Because that's what it's about. White people have institutional power from their whiteness. Now, I'm not going to be an idiot here and say that every white person has the same level of institutional power because that ignores how class and individual subcultures play into that, right? Like a poor Italian immigrant is not going to be in the same social economic strata as like somebody who's descended from somebody
bankers.
who owned stock. I'm going to go more specific. Somebody who's descended from somebody who owned a high amount of stock in the copper industry, because when copper was getting used to build the railroad, or not railroads, the telephone lines that went across the country, people who had investments in that turned into fucking old money overnight, basically. Right? Yeah. So it's not even always that like your family did something exploitative, right? Like maybe your family was just lucky and they invested in AT&T at the initial time that they opened up, and they ended up being one of the biggest telecommunication structures on North America. That's not to say that your family shouldn't have invested in it. What it is to say is that the system is broken. It has always been broken. It was designed to exclude people. The people who have the most power proportional in that system are people provided advantages by the system. We don't want people to feel bad that they were born on the side of the fence with the apple tree. We want them to take down the fence so that everybody can eat the apples, right? And I think that's where a lot of the problems come for people is they get tied up in this personal, what I have and haven't done to contribute to the problem. And it's fucking irrelevant because it's not about, are you a good person? Are you a bad person? It's about what can we do to undermine a system that dehumanizes everybody if given the chance, right? Even the people on top get dehumanized too, because they have to go along with like violence against people in other parts of the world that they don't even necessarily agree with. But if they don't, they'll lose their position.
A Supreme Court judge that doesn't believe in the validity of his own marriage, of his own interracial marriage. So he's playing the game too, but he's getting played simultaneously.
And that's the thing,
you know,
is people aren't asking white people to feel bad. People are asking white people to use that intergenerational power. I'm going to give a great example. Y'all know Philosophy Tube, Abigail Thorne?
No, I haven't heard.
Yeah, I think I do.
She's a great person. She's descended from monarchy. She's not like super rich and powerful, but she got a really fucking good education. So she's a trans woman, by the way. She made her whole YouTube channel about trying to give her philosophy education away for free. She was always trying to teach people how they could work together, how they could build up, how they could like actuate, you know what I mean? And that's what we need. Nobody comes for Abigail Thorne because she's an actress. Nobody comes for her because she lives a comfortable life, because what she's done is turned her privilege into something that benefits everybody else. Even if it's just something as small as trying to give your education away for free, you are fundamentally undermining the structure that keeps people pinned in disadvantageous positions, and you are actively resisting it, right? She didn't need to go do some really big act like trying to bomb the fucking government like Guy Fawkes did, right? She didn't need to do that. All she needed to do was use her skills where she had them and help people where she could. And she's made a phenomenal change. She's saved trans people's lives, and she has talked about feeling uncomfortable about that in her videos, because like people have come to her and been like, wow, your video on like suicide saved my life, you know? And like she's done a lot of really important work for people. Nobody has ever said that I've ever heard Abigail shouldn't have a car, or Abigail shouldn't have a house, or Abigail shouldn't have her education. Nobody wants to take away the base privileges that other people have. We just want it extended to everybody. And I think that's where people really trip up. Nobody wants to tear down the educational institution unless you're a fucking conservative and you're trying to hold power over other people. What people want is access to education that gives people a future where they can actuate and be the best version of themselves that they want to be, right? So nobody, like the whole trying to reach out to white people is just really trying to get past a conversation that has been deliberately muddled by rich investors who have a vested interest in the vast swaths of white people not understanding that logical error they're making, right? They make it about themselves personally when it never has been. It's always been an institutional thing, right? But people think in really granular, small terms, and it's hard to see the big us. And so we focus on the small me, right? But then that puts you at the forefront of everything. And no one person is responsible for everything. It's not my job to overthrow capitalism. It's my job to fight it in every moment that I possibly can, that I know I can do without destroying myself, right? Because if I throw myself into a battle that destroys me, I can't, guess what? I can't help anybody else ever again because I'm done.
Right. It's like if you don't hold down a job, right? Like you have to participate in capitalism. Like, no, you don't want to work the job that you're working, right? You know, most people don't want to devote the majority of their life to something that they don't want to fucking do. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they just don't want to do that. But you
and
have
that's
to.
Where a lot of
this to my breaking neck.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of this gets tripped up on, is the people who technically don't have to work because they have intergenerational wealth and that kind of stuff are the people most set up to undermine the system and change it, right?
But
like let's look at how much conservative Christians who organize with each other have changed the United States government in the past 20 years. It's fucking scary, right? But that doesn't happen with other people because they're taught that that can't happen. People are taught that, you know, the woke what's the word they were using? It was about racial
woke left.
No, there was another thing that they were freaking out about. It was like racial dialectics or something like that. Critical race theory, that was it. CRT,
yeah,
right?
CRT.
Yeah. That's another example of something they just fucking lost their minds over because they didn't want people to have an education on it, right? Because it's not about actually making white people feel bad. Critical race theory is always about getting them to understand the systemic pressures that allow white supremacist structures to continue to exist and how they are unwilling participants. And even that's a poor language because they're being held as hostages. They just don't even realize it, right? Nobody agrees to be a part of this system that dehumanizes all of us. We are held against consent and levied with violence if we don't do it, right? So like, even the people who have that privilege don't want to be in that position, even though they have that privilege, right? Nobody wants to be a proxy of the state who's inflicting violence on other people, unless you're a sick and twisted individual who actually signs up for like the CIA and those type of government institutions, right? So like, if we look at what happened around critical race theory, it was billionaires and it was right-wing pundits who pumped a lot of money into twisting the narrative. So you can't even say CRT without automatically having all of the bubble of how they've changed the word, right? It's like woke. Woke was from African-American vernacular English, and it was about talking about how, hey, stay woke or the cops are going to kill you, right?
Right.
It's
about
like,
be alert.
Be aware,
yeah.
Yeah. And it was then adapted later on into like people being woke about society and understanding how we are constantly living under threats of like social war. You know what I mean?
The woke thing is the thing that makes me laugh the most because they're like the woke left. I'm like, yes, we are woke. We are awakened.
I am awake.
We are
regrettably
everything.
But these are the same people who call the Bible woke, who try to like retcon it to say that Jesus didn't say to feed the poor, right? Like,
yeah, there's like a reboot of the evangelicals, right?
Well,
That's what we're talking about, the conservative evangelicals.
But that's how they control shit, is they define the narratives, right? Woke, which started as a term by Black people to talk about the pressures they existed under, became a term that now the right wing uses to bemoan and demonize anything that's actually trying to make the world a better place, as though that's inherently a bad thing, right?
Right, yeah.
Right.
You were going to say something,
that's
Scott.
where the problem is. Yes, please continue.
Well, I was just going to... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What I was going to say was, you see now, even in congregations of Christians, it was funny. I probably mentioned this before. I don't know, but a lot of these people are now saying to their pastors, like, that's too, like, they'll come up to them after the sermon and be like, that's very woke.
Yeah.
And the pastor's like,
Jesus
but
is too woke.
Right, now they're saying like Jesus is too woke, and he's like, well, that's what's in the Bible. And they're like, and I've seen interviews where people are like, yeah, but that doesn't work now because now we're at war, and they use like terms of war. They use like, remember how earlier in the conversation I was like, I don't want to use this term. It's too, whatever.
Yeah.
They actively use those terms on purpose, or well, I don't even know if any of them are aware of it, but what they're being fed, right? They're being fed this by the conservative media, using terms like war and the destruction of, and using very inflammatory language to get them riled up. And because they're incredibly uneducated, now they're literally telling their pastors like, no, we have to like hurt these people. They're becoming more and more ready to hurt people who don't agree with them.
It's like a modern crusade, like the Crusades.
I got a meme about this.
Kind of, again, in a modernized way.
But this is what historians always say, right? I mean, I know it's cliche and probably people are tired of hearing it, but I always have thought it was very true about the idea that, when you don't understand history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Prime example.
We've how many witch hunts have we had? How many people, how many times have we, it's like
documents about queer people.
This is why
the raids in the Chicago gay bars, like.
This is why I do this podcast, is because we need to come together as a community. And I mean, like, everyone who's ever been marginalized or fucking oppressed in some goddamn way, okay? That's really what I'm here for, because until I know we talk about these bigger problems and, the system of violence that we live under and capitalism is killing us all. We are also killing ourselves because we are allowing ourselves to be poisoned in our minds, okay? So
don't trigger me. I'll start singing on live stream.
What?
You said poison, and I was
right, the song. Oh, right. But yeah,
exactly.
It's,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Has Been Hotel.
Damn it!
I want to record it so bad.
Just do a cover, and we'll just post it in the Discord or something.
Oh, I want to.
Yeah. But we're all infighting.
The meme I was talking about.
Oh, okay. Did you put it in voice text or general?
I put it in show notes.
Okay.
Watching the worst people.
But yeah, that's kind of like the whole point of what I'm trying to bring home here with having this podcast, is like, we need to sort out our problems internally with all of our marginalized communities. And then one day we're all going to be like, oh my God, wow, we all have the same fucking struggle, huh? We're all just fighting these big ass corporations in the fucking world that they've built. Maybe we should do something about it collectively, but we need more organizations. And the problem is, like, that also requires, like, money, one, and collaboration between people. And the problem that often occurs, especially in witchcraft and occult spaces, is, so someone tries to, like, say, like, they have a coven, and maybe they want to, like, take their coven and, like, expand it maybe more. Say they want to build, like, a church or a pagan temple or some kind of community, occult, other organization, right? Then power struggles come in. Well, I'm doing it this way. I did this, and then the bit, and it's mine, and it's actually, and it's like, and it becomes more of like I care more about being the leader of the thing than it just becomes power struggle.
So I've been involved in some protests before. I'm not going to talk about the names of them, but actually, I think personally, the big issue undermining change is infiltration. This is going to sound really fucking paranoid. So put on a tinfoil hat and put some salt under your tongue before I say it, okay? But we know the CIA has a surveillance network that spans the entire globe, right?
And we know our phones listen to us. What's up, Google?
Have y'all been in a protest before?
I have not been involved in. I've been protested against. For all the events.
There's
but I've never
people
been
in those protests, and I don't want to sow discord and make people paranoid, but you need to be aware if you're going to get into this, the government actively infiltrates movements that try to oppose them, right? They did it with the Black Panthers. They did it with every single fucking counter-revolutionary movement that's ever happened. If you are going to participate in movements against a power structure, that power structure already knows about it and will plan to infiltrate you and undermine you ahead of time. Like, we had people in our protest that were trying to advocate for violence, that were trying to rabble rouse, that were trying to get us do shit that could consistently get us shut down.
Right.
And they flew fucking black unmarked helicopters over us at nighttime that we couldn't see, just so that we'd know they were watching us, right?
That's just
they sent armed men with handguns in unmarked black SUVs to draw them and point them at us and tell us we had to leave, okay? They didn't shoot us. They just intimidated us at gunpoint, right? These are things that happened. They took a empty carriage, the one that they carry the riot horses in, and they drove it around us 3 times just to say, hey, we can break your little protest at any moment, so you better watch out, right? And this was right around the anniversary of the G20 riots in Toronto. If you know anything about those, they were a big fucking deal. And have you ever heard how during like protests like that, for some reason, cop cars get lit on fire after they get flipped? Totally infiltration shit, right?
Yeah.
Like, the US government's even talked about how they've done this with their own movements, with like the hippies in the 1970s. They send in an operative who knows how this shit works, who's explicitly trained to undermine these organizations. They encourage people to do shit that can get them shut down. And when somebody either becomes a influential member in that movement or has the potential to cause a change and they can't radicalize them or get at them, they will do every single thing in their power to undermine and tear down that person and make them feel paranoid, from sending cops to patrol them outside their home, which actually fucking happened to me. I don't talk about this a lot because it really fucked with me, and that's like why I moved onto the street for the period that I did. I didn't feel safe in my own fucking home because the cops could just like roll up when nobody's there and do something, right? And it happens consistently all throughout time. The real problem with these revolutionary movements is that the people that we are trying to take down are the people who are working with us to take us down, to stop it from happening. It happened with Extinction Rebellion. It happened with like the fucking George Floyd protests.
Yes.
You cannot have a counter movement that does not get infiltrated. It will happen. And so I've kind of come to a crazy point in my life where I, honest to God, think the only solution for the situation we're in is magic. Because magic is something that's really kept under lock and key in our society, right? People in institutional control don't even want to entertain the possibility that they could exist, even though as practicing witches, we all here have seen how absurdly powerful this shit can be. And we all know that nobody's in control of it.
Yeah, it's the thing they're always trying to be like, nah, it's bullshit, it's stupid, it's childish, or whatever they say.
Here's a real question. Why did every group of heroes in every Final Fantasy game win against the big bad? It's one simple answer that not everybody thinks about. They had magic. They literally had fucking magic to cure their gunshot wounds and throw fireballs at people, okay? Not saying we're going to get to that level of how magic works on our universe or whatever, but I'm really starting to truly believe that the only meaningful way to actually fight back with like drawing blood is with magic. right? Every other avenue is controlled. Every other avenue is patrolled. Every other avenue will encourage you to take actions that will then find you behind bars and removed from any type of revolutionary action. The system is set up to catch and find people who do it. They will even fucking entrap you into doing it like they've tried with other people. Like after 9/11, there was like a guy they entrapped into trying to like attack a US airliner with a fucking Stinger missile, but it didn't work because it was like the CIA that had set up the whole fucking thing to begin with, right?
Wow.
Like, yeah, it happens a lot, right? So I don't know if I'm just sounding really crazy at this point, but I really truly do think that the way that we have to fight back is with magic.
It doesn't sound crazy.
No, I think that you know, there are a great. I mean, there are a great many spells to reveal, you know, saboteurs and thieves, and you know, like we've been doing magic like that for a long time. To you know, in the long lost friend, to spell book that was in circulation here in the United States up until about like I think I read like this 63 I think, or in the 60s, and there's a lot of like, you know, holding a thief in their place, you know, when they steal they cannot move, you know, that kind of thing, right? So I mean, yeah, to cast spells, to bring subterfuge out into the light, you know, to disallow obfuscation, you know, that kind of. Yeah, it's literally was my first thought, to reveal the truth of a situation.
I'm curious. So if you had a bunch of magic practitioners all casting, right? So like, suppose we could get. I'm just gonna come up with a number. 1,000 people, right? So we have a guaranteed 1,000 people, 1,000 magic practitioners casting magic to, you know, unfuck the world. I'm being very general here, but would it be better to prevent? This is to prevent infiltration, because I know, like, you know, the government. There's occultists working for all world governments. We know that,
of course.
So you know, you don't want
Alexander Dugin is a good example.
Yeah, so like you want to avoid people infiltrating your magic, right? You don't want people like undoing your own spell that you're creating. So I'm curious if it's better to have 1,000 people do the same working, or have 1,000 people do a different working with the same intention. So that way it's 1,000 different spells, but with the same intention.
Ooh. I'm going to give you a different take. I think the numbers are off here. I think you'd either need about 1,000 extremely skilled practitioners or close to 1 million people who have some idea of what they're doing. Maybe like 100,000, but like.
Yeah, I didn't want to focus on the number too much.
You know,
it was just like, is it better to have,
but you know,
like 1 million different spells with one intention, or 1 million of the same spell?
There's two lines of thought to this. One, it's infinitely harder to control a large group of people, right? Because people are at that size going to do what they think is best for whatever movement it is, and their actions can actually really contradict what the movement is trying to have happen, right? But if you centralize it too much, the people who do this stuff, they're trained to rise to the top of the social strata in those groups, right? If you form the most possibly condensed group of skilled practitioners you can, I promise you it'll be infiltrated.
Right, yeah.
I promise you it's already infiltrated before you start adding people, they know about it, right?
Right.
So honestly, I think the best way to get this to happen is the same way that the George Floyd protests happened. Such a big movement that anybody can get involved on any level, and that becomes a nightmare, right? Because they can deal with a group of 100 extremely skilled individuals plying their attention just by tearing it apart with like social drama, like what happens very often in occult groups already, just saying, cough, cough. The more condensed you make it, the more susceptible to a COINTELPRO, which is the name of this technique, attack. COINTELPRO is a term I think the CIA developed in the 60s, which is when you send somebody to infiltrate a group and to change the overall message and operation of the group to radicalize it so you can shut it down, right?
Yeah.
So I think the only way to reach people with this type of thing is to make it a mass movement, like the flower power generation, you know what I mean? Or like all we need is love, which like that's also a lie. You can't love a gun out of an oppressor's hands.
No,
okay, he will shoot you.
Yeah.
I think that it needs to reach mass movement territory to the point where everybody feels empowered to get in and do anything they can. Because then it's like the idea of fighting a raid boss in an open world area with 1 million people who can only do 1 damage each. Okay, well, those 1 million people hit 5 times, and congratulations, the minimum damage has turned into 5 million in the blink of an eye, right?
Right, yeah.
So I think mass movement is really the best way to do it. I think if something could happen that maybe revolutionizes the public's understanding of magic, maybe like there's a breakthrough in the field of quantum physics. Like I don't know if y'all heard, but the Nobel Peace Prize last year went to somebody who confirmed the double slit experiment and recreated it.
What's that?
Just a little quantum physics experiment that was done a long time ago that basically states that particles don't exist in a defined state until they're observed, in which case they collapse into that state.
Oh, right. Yeah. So like that
I'm
main
probably
theory
using the wrong terms.
The main theory behind quantum physics is that like basically there are infinite possibilities at any given point in time, and yeah.
I think a lot of it is the fact that matter actually structures itself and behaves according to conscious observation. I think that's actually what the test confirmed.
Okay.
So because like the double slit was like particles going through 2 slits, and when they weren't being observed by a person, they behaved in a very specific way. But when a consciousness was introduced to observe it, and I could be massively misrepresenting this, please go look up the double slit experiment on your own time and research this. But it was proved last year that somebody could recreate it under scrutiny and cause the same effect to happen. And that person won the Nobel Peace Prize for it. So we actually had a massive advancement in quantum understanding last year that not everybody really even knew about. But yeah, the double slit experiment, which was like one of the things that people used more than anything else to advocate for the existence of magic being like a consciousness based phenomenon, actually looks really fucking correct right now. So like if somebody can extrapolate off of that and give a general theory about how consciousness can physically alter the universe, baby, you got a social mass movement on your hands right there.
You know, and I kind of think like Gray School might be sort of like driving force behind that, because like that's kind of their whole thing, is this blend of like science and magic. And because like they're a nonprofit organization, they are a school, and they're trying to get like an accreditation kind of thing of like making, you know, the trade of wizardry is an actual trade. Like we need people who are magic practitioners in the world, you know, to really know their craft and what they're doing. So yeah, I think that's like it's kind of cool that like, you know, we already have at least like an institution in place that like people are learning, and that can maybe potentially be like something to kind of drive that, which could be very.
But if we can get like, please go ahead, Scott.
Oh no, I was just saying I always thought it would be really cool to have like more magic schools.
Yeah.
Feel, you know, obviously
not just a course from some random
place to go.
Yeah,
like,
a place to go.
I really think it would be cool to have like a place to go. And you know, the thing is that a lot of them end up they were growing a little bit in popularity when I was in high school.
Yeah.
There was a few, but a lot of them shut down. And you know, I understand that it's very niche.
It's also a lot of work to run a proper school.
Yeah. And you know, obviously, like I often sit and I wonder if people with experience, like if you were to try to like, as I always said, like, wouldn't it be cool if like a magic school that opened during a time where maybe people could like you seasonally, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you enroll for that season,
right?
However long that would be, and sure, the curriculum would have to be different because a lot of obviously the people coming would be adults, and they have jobs and things, right? But even then, like if you had parental permission and older teenagers, 18, whatever, wanted to come, whatever,
it's pretty
there
much
would
how
be
the grade
ways to
school's
do
set
that.
up, like, because you can be a minor, you just need parental consent to
Right.
join the classes. So yeah.
And having professionals who've kind of maybe witches who teach, in their professional, like, mundane lives, and have maybe people who actually do counseling to help people, if we had like curriculum, having people actually create like, well, this is a
Like
logical string
teach
for
magic as a field of study. Teach it just like we would teach, biology or chemistry or history. Like it's just another subject.
right.
Not
Because
that I think it could be. I don't think you could like make a magic class in like current like American school. Like I don't think that would work. But I do like the idea of having a separate place to learn it.
But like, because like there's so many like beautiful abandoned places in Pennsylvania, for instance, and just America that are absolutely gorgeous. That you could definitely have the aesthetic. I mean, I know aesthetic isn't magic, but people love a good aesthetic. And the thing is too, but I was thinking like how cool, to get back to what I was saying, like if you have someone with a botany degree who also practices magic, who can teach you the science of herbs and how to grow them, and also we learn about the folklore and the folkloric use of herbs, and then you have people come from all over the world who can give talks, teach classes,
It would be great if
whatever.
it like for it to be like a respected institution, not just like, oh, look at these weirdos out here, like.
What the thing is though is like right now something that I'm realizing is that due to the popularity of magic, we are now on like the rate more so than ever on the radar of sadly both the Christian, the Christian nationalists, even though they've always been looking at us for what for forever, thousands of years, but now we have the eye of the that typical neckbeard anti-theist, the whole like you're just as stupid as they are, and then like it's just like, oh, I will stab you in the throat with a pen. But now we have that to contend with, right? And now it's and the thing is, even though we understand what we're talking about, right? Like when we're sitting here talking about how magic is a phenomenon that happens in the human mind, and how the mind is bigger than what you think it is, and how it affects the reality in which we're in, right? When we start talking about this stuff, when we start talking about it from a psychological, so like us talking about the archetypes, right? When we start talking about physics and these things, right? Suddenly it becomes, oh, you're misrepresenting science, right?
Yeah.
And the
like
thing
both
is
things
that
can be simultaneously true.
the thing is though is that like it's difficult because we're also talking about something in which I hate talking about it lately because I know it's like but we talk about it here anyway. But sometimes weird things happen when you practice magic, right? Yeah. Things that break the scientific process, right?
My nail literally popped off as you said that. Like
right?
my acrylic nail.
Like my experience to this day with the candle when I was doing the binding spell, and it kept going. Like now I'm in my kitchen. There's not enough draft to do this in here. I mean, my house is drafty, but not like that where it's literally going out and then coming back to life over and over and over. It's going.
Yeah.
Like that was impossible, right? Yeah. And then I've had a friend of mine. He was arguing with an ex, and her hair clip that was sitting between them shattered. Like just. I had another friend, and this one was even weirder. He was involved with the church, although he's a practitioner. And they had a priest was doing a house blessing, and the aspergillum shattered. The metal aspergillum shattered like glass.
Whoa, that's
yeah. So the thing is, it's like, now, of course, people will say, well, it's a lie, right? You're giving anecdotal experience. The problem is that, I don't know how to, and this is just a me thing. I don't know how to argue a point when they say, well, that's just your experience, which I agree with. Fundamentally, I understand that. But the problem is when I tell them magic is experiential, it's not a blind faith thing. Right? Mm-hmm. It's not just something that we hope is going to happen.
Right. Or something we fucking delude ourselves into thinking.
Right. It's something that we're like, okay, this spell didn't work right. I added the wrong ingredient, or I said the wrong thing. My mind wasn't in the right place. Like, there's steps to it to work it back, to make it work, right? And then of course we see the effect of it. Me and our friend Michelle, Jay, we're pretty good at the weather witching thing. And people really go in that. It's often seen as very grandiose, which I agree, but I'm also not sitting here saying that I don't think that there's a process to that. Right. And me and Michelle were talking about it at your wedding. And about how you can't stop a storm that's already there because the system is too strong, right? Like, it's when you want to abate a storm, it's easier. I mean, you could, but it's easier to abate storms before they hit, when they're still growing. Like, and some people even argue that you have to understand environmental science in some capacity
you have to know what fuels the storm.
I don't know if I do. I'm just delivering what some people do. But yeah, the thing is that and I try to tell people it's based in logic, right? We use the philosophy of logic to execute the art of magic, right? It's not. I don't know. I think that's these are the big problems. Faith. We have two very strong communities of people who very much do not like what we're doing. And it's two very strong extremes that are both equally as wrong as the other. But and that I think is our biggest issue. I think that's what's one of the biggest issues, is that we have a lot of pushback.
Yes.
We're either the nut jobs, or we're the
dangerous,
the demons, right? The diabolical ones who, we're back to the whole eating babies thing. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, we're back to that.
There's a lot of the same.
I would just like to say that babies cause a lot of gas and a lot of heartburn. It's really not worth it. They're more bone than they are meat. I'm sorry, as a Jew and a witch, I'm so fucking tired of being accused of eating babies. Like, it's just like, no, why would I want to eat a baby? I'd rather eat a deer.
The thing is, the funny thing is like, I can trace it to something, but the weird thing is that I know for a fact that the people who claim it couldn't trace it back to the same place. So in the earliest, we used to use folk names for herbs and potion making.
I've knew.
So our flying ointment. Have you ever seen the movie Warlock? It's based off of the Dutch Deutsch Brauerei type of Pennsylvania Deutsch.
I should watch that.
You should. The first one. The other ones get a little weird, but the first one's really good. Yeah. And in Old German, for the flying women, it talks about baby fat. But what it was talking about was the fat of like a baby a cow, or
like a cow or goat or sheep,
but it says baby fat, but it was on purpose, right? It was to scare you away from, I guess, the mysteries, as as some people call them, right? It's because the idea,
or maybe it was just understood at the time. Like, maybe it was just fucking understood.
Maybe
that
it was too. I don't
baby
know.
Fat from an animal. Like, if you're gonna get fat, it's gonna come from an animal, not a fucking person, because that's just not what we were doing. You know?
Maybe, and you know what, that as well. Although I do feel like when it was written down, see, like, you know why I say that is because a lot of the old grimoires have the I think I call them magic cock blocks, but they essentially purposely will write in something wrong in the process, like when they're describing how to do something, and it's up to you to have done enough reading to know your shit enough to say that's not right. Like, I have a book upstairs written by famed occultist Herman Slater.
Okay.
He once had a shop called the Magical Child in New York City. He's passed on now, but in his book, A Magical Formulary, I was looking up a love formula, a fast or fiery love formula, and he did something that was really interesting. But it says Saturnian oil.
In what? In a love potion?
There you go.
Yeah. So what, you're gonna invoke somebody's fucking karmic weight onto them for a love? Yeah, that's the kind of thing that if you know what you're talking about, you should fucking scream as soon as you see it and go, excuse me? Or like, hey, why don't I just go use Mars oil in, I don't know,
in a peace
trying
potion.
to have a fucking plants grow. Actually, no, invoking Mars for peace can theoretically work because you're invoking a god of war, which could then end war because it's under his domain, right? That actually makes a lot of fucking sense. But if you're invoking Mars oil to try and get your plants to grow, you fucked up.
And that's that, right? And that's exactly it, right? He did the same thing. He was a strong believer that those who know, and those who don't screw themselves over.
Fucking Saturn oil in a goddamn love potion. Why don't you just put a gun in your mouth?
Jesus. That sounds like my kind of love potion. For those
who don't know, Saturn is the god of like repercussions, okay? And like you get what's coming for you. So if you go and put Saturn oil in a love potion, you're already trying to convince somebody to be with you who doesn't want to be with you, and it's gonna fuck your shit up for it.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a good time.
Fuck your shit up, bro.
We have been blathering on for an hour and a half. I know, Sophia, you were talking about.
It's a really good episode.
It is a good episode, and that's why I didn't really cut us off at around an hour, because I'm like, look at us still going.
Could even make it a two-parter. I don't care.
Right. But Chris was saying in the chat, potions and elixirs were written in code like that, so the general people got confused and scared off. But yeah, if you were a fellow practitioner, you knew. I kind of would like to write a modern sort of book of magic like that, like a coded book of magic. I think if I was ever going to write a book, it might be about that. And it might be just a very,
and then do some Willy Wonka shit and have like a cipher for the code in 1 out of every 100,000 books.
I really love the Big Toe channel in the DKMU server. I think some of the writing that comes from there is very cool. It's like that magical coded writing kind of thing. Some of it comes across as very unhinged. Yeah, and some of it comes across as just very unhinged, you know. But
let's be clear, a lot of people don't know how to write toes, and they basically just think that it's schizo posting with flair, which it's absolutely not. It's absolutely not. It's like automatic writing to incur a understanding of something in another person who understands those currents without implicitly stating any of the words used. It is actually a coded language, and it's coded on a level where there's no cipher. You have to understand the intrinsic currents behind what someone's doing. And if you're not on that wavelength, you ain't gonna get shit out of it, right?
Like the metaphors and symbology.
I bet even the CIA, it looks at our Big Toe and goes, these guys are onto some shit.
Right, I bet.
I can't even crack this. The fuck are they talking about?
But yeah, if I was ever going to write a book of magic, it might be, something like that, But any concluding thoughts? We've been going on for a while.
Yeah.
We should probably wrap up today's recording session.
I'm gonna start maybe fucking with this archetypes book a little bit more and fucking with the people listening. So while we were talking, I threw some cards, and if these are meaningful to you, maybe sit on the archetype. I'll post the cards and the accompanying information in the Discord for anybody who's interested. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna throw some cards at each episode, maybe get like 1 card or 2 cards tops. And whichever one kind of grabs you, if you're interested into it, go and explore the archetypes, you know? Mm-hmm. The first one I got is the creator. It's the artist, the alchemist, the innovator. I'm not going to sit down here and read every word on this. They will be in the Discord posted, so you can go look into it and use your own divination with it. If you have your own wild archetypes deck, you can literally just look up the card names and see what it means. The first one's the creator. It's about, you know, the one who turns the blank canvas into something, the person who finds the seed that was passed up and makes a bountiful harvest from it, you know. And then the second archetype that we got was the animal, the beast, the wild one, or the she-wolf. So go ahead and look in the Discord. In about 5-10 minutes, I will have photos of both of those up in there for everybody who's interested.
Awesome. Perfect. Any concluding thoughts from you, Scott or Rue, before we close out for today?
No, I don't think I have any for today.
Okay. I liked today. It was a good day. What about you, Rue? Anything?
We had a good episode.
Oh, I could hit the right button to talk. That would be a great concluding thought. Always hit your push to talk in order to actually talk, people. No, happy episode 134. The number means nothing. I'm just glad that I actually sat through an hour and a half and I remembered the episode number. So there's my contribution. What's up?
All right, everyone.